Welcome to TLC Tropical Literature Creatives, the program where we interview authors and creatives about themselves and about their literary works. Today we have with us the buoyant Darwin Samuel. Brian is the author of Song for My Father. Brian, welcome to TLC Tropical Literature Creatives.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It's good to be here.
And we're glad to have you, especially on such short notice.
It's okay.
Well, Brian, just curious, which Caribbean island do you hail from? Do you share heritage with?
Well, all of them. I was born in Grenada, and I currently live in Grenada. I've lived in Trinidad. I lived in Trinidad when I was a kid. I lived in Guyana when I was a little kid, but I don't really remember that. I also lived in Jamaica for 13 years. I lived in Barbados for 2 stints of 5 years each.
Wow.
So I've been all over the Caribbean.
Okay. Well, this kind of, I'll probably have to change my question. I usually ask persons, what do you recommend persons try when they go to your country? But I mean, seeing that you have shared heritage with all these islands, I'm not too sure how you're going to respond to something like that.
Well, I always respond to that question very differently. People always ask me, foreigners always ask me, where should I go to the Caribbean? And I look at them and I make a decision on what to say. Like sometimes I will say, you must go to Jamaica. Because you are that type of person. Sometimes I can say, go anywhere, but don't go to Jamaica. Go to Barbados, or go to Grenada, or go to Trinidad. It depends who's doing the asking. Different islands for different people.
Okay. As that's the case, I mean, before we get into anything, I mean, tell us a bit about your book. Not too much because, we still have to buy the book now, but enough,
Yes. Without giving away the plotline, I mean, the secret's in the title, Song for My Father. It's actually about my father. It's about our early life. It's about my grandfather. And it really spans the period from 1940 to 1975. And I was lucky to have a lot of evidence, so to speak. My father was a hoarder. He kept every single thing. He kept parking tickets, he kept letters, he kept diaries, he kept photographs, he kept documents. He always had a good camera and he was always taking lots of pictures.
Okay.
So I've used all of this stuff. I've used his diary from 1955. My grandfather's diary from Grenada in the year 1950, which is a hugely dramatic year both for him personally and for Grenada. When the island of Grenada was engulfed in riots against British colonial rule. And there were fires and so on. It became known as the Sky Red Days, when there were Eric Gary came back to Grenada and just literally set the place on fire. And then we left there. So everywhere we went, my father kept all this stuff. And I had it all, and I decided to about 10 years ago to start to write the book. It really goes into, it's a kind of a tribute to my father because he was a very unusual man in a lot of ways. When we're talking about West Indian fathers, sometimes we West Indian fathers don't cover ourselves in glory. There is the rather depressing trope of the deadbeat dad, the absent father. And, ask any West Indian, it's about my mother. It's all about my mother, my mother, my mother. Fathers, well, in our case, it was exactly the opposite. It was our father who raised us and our mother who left us.
Well, look at that, man. I mean, the exception to the rule.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, and there were a lot of exceptions in the book and in the journey that we've had. It was our white Scottish mother who left, and our black Grenadian father who played the single father role, and he took us on a ride from Grenada, Guyana, Trinidad, England, America, all over the place. And it was quite an unusual upbringing for me and my 2 brothers. And I just say that my 2 brothers are actually legally called Tom and Gerry. Our father had a sense of humor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, a lot of persons have different ways of dealing with situations that are, uncomfortable to say the least. I mean, why do you choose writing as an outlet for this? Why a book?
Well, originally, when we were kids, when our mother left, I was 6. My brothers were 9 and 10, and we all had the same selective memory. I remember life in Trinidad before then. I remember everything. We lived on Gordon Street in Curep. You know, my brothers went to Tranquility, and we remember all these things. But what we don't remember is our mother. We don't remember our mother's presence in our lives, and not too much anyway, just bits and pieces. And I think that was a sort of a subconscious defense mechanism. You know, we we grew up not knowing where our mother was and who she was or what she was and so on. Um, so we didn't think that was that was abnormal. It's just the way we grew up. Um, and our father really went above and beyond the call of duty because he had gone to England during the war. He had gone to England in 1942.
Okay.
So, he was pre-Windrush. The whole Windrush thing started with the ship going to England in 1948. Well, he'd gone there in 1942. He worked in England during the Second World War. He worked on the production line for the Lancaster bombers in Manchester. And he lived there for a long time. He lived there almost 10 years. Then when we went back to the West Indies, after his wife left, he decided to go back to England. So he hauled us from our really idyllic childhood in Trinidad and Grenada in 1960. And then, bam, we landed in London. End of life as we knew
it. End of summer, the beginning for others.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't like England at all. I mean, I was 7 years old and I hated this place. In Trinidad, we didn't even know about race. There were black kids, there were white kids, there were brown kids, there were Indian kids. It was never a factor. Nobody even thought about it. And all of a sudden, you go to England and they're calling me chocolate face and wog and nignog and so on. And you're like, where did this come from? And we really didn't like it. And it took me a long time to get comfortable within my skin as a kid growing up in the 60s in England.
Yeah.
It was a difficult adjustment to make as a child.
I mean, seeing that you were a child, I mean, was there anything that your father would have done to help with the adjustment aside? I don't know, anything that he would have recommended, any advice he would have given?
He was a good father in that he did lots for us. He decided, I think, when his wife left, he decided that he was going to raise his 3 sons on his own. Although he had several partners, they were relatively short term. They never got too comfortable. And he raised us on his own. And he would do things like take us to museums and, take us on walks and take us to West End Theatre even, what they call the nosebleed seats. You go there at Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. And if there are, available seats, you pay a pound or two. And so we saw all these, we had a good upbringing in terms of the experiences that he gave us. And he also instilled in us a very, very strong sense that we were A, West Indian, and B, Black. He would tell us stories from his own childhood, growing up in Grenada. We knew all about Ladia Bless and Sukuya and Lugaru and all these things. So he very much kept us, kept the West Indian flag alive as we grew up. So, although we didn't have a mother, we had a damn good father, except for his cooking, which is truly, truly, truly awful. He could ruin an egg, let alone dinner.
Yeah. Let me just change gears a bit. I know we were talking about your dad, but let's just talk about the book in particular. When it came to getting the book published, I mean, was there a reason that you chose to? Who did you approach to publish the book? Did you approach? Is it self-published or did you go to?
Yeah, I had fully expected to self-publish this thing. I've been writing this thing on and off for more than 10 years. I'd write a bit and write something and then put it down for a year or two and then go back to it a year or two later and say, "Oh God, that's awful," and that kind of thing. And really, the impetus to finish it off and get it out there came during COVID. like, with everybody else, you've got nothing to do. And that gave me the year or so that I needed to really get to grips with this thing, and to finish the book. It was a very painful book to finish. It was a fun book to start and a painful book to finish, because I don't want to spoil the plot, but there are some very difficult things for me to write about on a family basis, particularly to do with my mother and so on. So it took a lot of iterations, and there were some things there that I didn't put in to begin with. And my wife, Marion, would say to me, Brian, you're hiding from the truth. You're running from the truth. You're not facing your demons, and you need to do this. And again, like I said, some of it was extremely painful to write, but it was a cathartic thing to do. And I'm glad I did that. Now, when it comes to publishing, well, like everybody else, I was ready to self-publish. I mean, that's what you do. And then I wrote to my alma mater, UWI Publishing. I wrote to them, and they said they were interested, which really surprised me, because this is not their kind of academic type book. But anyway, they said they were interested, but they were very inefficient, and it went on and on and on and on, and nothing was happening. And then, just through serendipity, somebody I met on a boat, actually, I was doing some sailing. She gave me Ian Randall's email address. Jamaica, Ian Randall Publishing. Of course, I knew about Ian Randall Publishing. I sent him an email on a Friday, about 6 paragraphs. This is my life. This is my story. This is my book.
Yes.
And he wrote back within half an hour and said, "Boy, send me the of your book. With this email, I'm interested." And I sent straight away. And I think on the weekend, you read the whole thing. And on Tuesday or something, you wrote back. I said, "Let's go. I like this story. It's an incredible story." And he extremely instrumental in shaping and getting the book out and so on, and also get me to to focus the book. And he was. I want to thank him for believing in me and getting it this far.
That is encouraging. That is encouraging. Oh, is this your first book?
Yeah, it's not the first book I've written, but it's the first book I've published.
Oh.
I thought my life, a lot. I mean, I've lived in 10 countries. I've moved from one to another 22 times. When I moved back to Grenada in 2020 from Barbados, where I was working with CDD, that's the 22nd time in 69 years I've moved from one country to the other. It's crazy. A lot of for 20 years I worked with the World Bank, and then in those 20 years I lived in 4 countries. So I just keep on moving from one place to the other. So when I came back, I'm semi-retired now. Emphasis on the semi. But yeah, I mean, years ago I wrote another book which is ready to go, called Babylon by Bike. And it's about me and my brothers Tom and Gerry riding 3 motorcycles in Jamaica in the 70s, 80s. Where we mingled with the likes of Bob Marley and so on and so forth. So that one is more of a fun book, but that one's also ready to come after this one.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, have there been any offers for that one as well, coming out of the success of this one?
Well, I don't know about success yet. Let's not count our chickens before they hatch yet, but it is getting some interest. I mean, I presented it at the Bocas Festival, where it got a lot of interest, and I've done a couple of interviews in Jamaica and so on. So it is selling quite well, even though it's only been out just a little over a month. So it is. But Ian Randall has, looked at the sort of outline of the next one. He said, "Yeah, we're ready to go when the time is right." So, watch this space. There'll be volume 2, and who knows, 3 and 4 to come.
I mean, so far from what you're saying, you seem to have a really colorful life. The traveling that you'd have done, the jobs that you would have had to work at. I mean, are there any skills or any experiences that you would have had that you could have say would have contributed to you putting these books together?
Actually, in a negative way, yes. Like I said, I worked for the World Bank for many, many years. And I found that when I turned my attention to writing for fun rather than writing for work. I still wrote like work, you know. I'd write like a memorandum, you know. You'd find words like however and therefore. And, you know, and my brother Tom, my late brother Tom, bless him, SOB that he is, he'll laugh when he used to call me Darwin Samuel, the king of turgid prose. I write something, you go, Brian, what, more turgid prose? So I had to take that on board and de-turgidify my writing, make it more organic, make it more from the heart, make it more, you know, straight talking rather than, you know, talking like a memorandum. But I kind of think I got the hang of it. And what I tried to do is make people laugh. I mean, we had quite a funny upbringing. It really was unusual. You can imagine 3 boys. Our father was a teacher.
Yeah.
He grew up in London in the 60s, and he was teaching in the day and selling encyclopedias door to door at night to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And imagine the fun and trouble that 3 little boys can get up to on the streets of Hampstead in the 60s, which we did. So a lot of it is funny, if I say so myself. And a lot of it, you know, a lady who read it, she said, this book made me laugh and it made me cry. And I that's kind of, you know, what I tried to do.
Oh, okay. I mean, that if there's any more incentive to buy a book that could do both, I mean, there it is. There it is. I mean, what's the reception been like? Because I was at the Booklet Fest this year, and when I heard the synopsis of the book, I mean, I was taken in. I was like, man, I have to get to the end of this thing. So, but in general, I mean, what's the reception been like?
The reception is very good. You know, I've gotten 4. It's still early days yet. It still hasn't been out 2 months yet, you know, because I follow these things daily. Got some very nice reviews on Amazon. And you know, on Facebook, people send me their opinions and so on and so forth. So it is getting a good reaction. The market that I want to break into is England, because a lot of the Windrush, the whole Windrush thing. I know it doesn't really resonate here in the Caribbean, but in England, the word Windrush is synonymous with Caribbean migration to the UK. And what was a scandal became the name of a generation, and this is a Windrush story. So I'll be going to England in August, where I'm preparing some speaking engagements and book signings and things like that.
Okay. When it came to writing the book, I mean, I know you said it took like us over 10 years to get it all together. That there were times when you started and then you stopped and then you started again. Were there times when, you know, you had set your mind to write, but just writing was just difficult for you?
Yeah. The funny bits and the fun bits were easy to write. The hard bits were difficult to write. And in fact, I didn't write them for a long time, you know. And like I said, my wife said, Brian, come on, face it, you know, get it out. And it took some late nights, you know, a few rum and gingers, and just to sort of, you know, get my head around and get it out on paper, which was quite painful. I mean, everybody in my family will tell you Brian is a baller. You know, I cry at the drop of a hat. I'll cry at sad movies. I'll cry at cute babies. So there were a few tears spent in getting some of the more painful parts of the book out, but it all worked out in the end.
Okay. I mean, the book is like you said, it's a tribute to your father, and you're talking about the paradigm. How it is it's usually, you know, the mother is the one who takes care and the father is the one who leaves. I mean, what would your advice be for men who are reading book who would read your literature like this? I mean, is there anything that you want men to take away from your book?
Yeah, be a man, be a father. You know, you have children. You know, whether you wanted them or whether you didn't want them, they're there and they're yours. And I think a lot of times parents and sadly West Indian fathers don't fully appreciate the harm that they can do to their children. You know, children are very delicate things, especially boys. Boys are the thing in the Caribbean which I really like to, you know, and I do some counseling for young men every now and again. I'm a member of a foundation that does some counseling and so forth. So young men If you look at universities now, I'm on the board at UWI Cave Hill. I think
Mm-hmm.
60% of the enrollment at Cave Hill is women. If you look at high school results and, high school O-level, what do you call them, CSE exams and so on, the women are outpacing the boys. And, when we talk about gender issues, let's not forget the boys, because they will grow. And we need to pay attention to them because a lot of them are lost and struggling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You had mentioned that you're part of a foundation. Have you ever been in a position where you've been a mentor to young men?
Yeah, throughout my career, well, when I got to be a certain age, of course, you can't be a 25-year-old mentor, but I was a mentor to young professionals coming up in the organization, in the World Bank, and so on. And I now, like I said, I'm a member of the Sweetwater Foundation, run by my friend Dr. Hazel Dabrio.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and every now and again, I will counsel, a group of young men who talk about things like, what does it mean to be a young man growing up? Yes, you got yourself into some trouble. Yes, you got a child that you may not have wanted and you're only 18, 19, but where do you go from here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I like doing that because I can speak from a position. I wasn't born successful. I worked my ass where I am. And, when I grew up in England, I was told by teachers that I was stupid. As a black kid growing up in the 60s, the most common thing that your teachers will tell you is you're a stupid boy. Mr. Valkenburg, my third form teacher, his favorite word was moron. And I was going nowhere in England. It was only when my father had a stroke of inspiration that he took me, age 18, from England to Jamaica, between lower sixth and upper sixth. I moved country yet again. And I didn't want to go to Jamaica, but Jamaica was the making of me because in Jamaica, for the first time, I went to a school that was run down. I used to see this school. It was, dilapidated and so on. But the real of education delivered by the teachers was outstanding. And for the first time, age 18, teachers are telling me, Darwin Samuel, you're clever, you're smart. I'm like, I'm not a moron. And in 1 year, I transformed from an underachieving, low confidence, immigrant black kid from England to a very self-confident, passed my A levels, went to university. I'm like, where did this happen? Had I stayed in England, that would never happen. So in another counter narrative, it was leaving, people sent their children and go to England to get good education, but it was only by leaving, going to Jamaica, I got a good education.
Look at that.
I schools in 3 countries, just saved me.
I mean, I think we could take it from you. I mean, from a man who's done so much traveling, who has been through so many education systems, to say that here's what the best I've gotten is from here in the Caribbean and Jamaica in particular. So I'm like, yeah,
right.
So you've heard it from Brian himself. No, I'm just curious about something. You said that you've done mentorship. How would you feel if it is that you were to use your book in particular as a tool for mentorship for persons to go through, read about your life, read about your biography and say, here's what I mean. This guy who's mentoring me told me to read this book and, I've gotten really good content from it. How would you feel about that? Your book being used as a tool for mentorship?
I would absolutely love that. I would absolutely love that. In fact, there are messages in the book which is applicable for young men of any kind. In fact, I'm speaking at a conference on well, not a conference, but sort of an event on June 10th here. It's called Hello Daddy. Speaking to young men. So I'll be presenting the book and speaking to young men and so on. So I absolutely would love that.
Okay. I mean, I know that I'm just deviating from the book a bit, but I can't not talk about the theme of the book as we're talking about the book. I mean, within a few days' time, Father's Day is going to be coming up. And I mean, I'm hoping that, that there are persons who are listening to this, who are fathers or who have sons or who have, positive male, influences or persons in their lives. If it is that they were to listen to this podcast, and what message would you like to share with them?
Just be aware of the huge impact that you have on your children, on your daughters and on your sons. Fathers, daughters love their fathers. Sons want to be like their fathers. So the father, and even if you're not together with the mother, but be there for your children, because the damage you can do is irreparable, and the good that you can do will last forever. And just be there. I had 5 children, and they're the most fun part of my life. I couldn't imagine life without children. And as they got older, they got more fun. It's not much fun. I mean, even at babies and changing nappies and so on and so on. But as they get older and they start to question and query and talk to you, and you talk to them, and you can see how they're shaping and they're coming along. It's a wonderful road. It really is. I couldn't envisage a situation where my children are not talking to me, or we don't talk, or oh, my dad is all on. Why would you do that? You have a blessing in a child or children. Nurture that blessing, and it will come back to you tenfold.
Okay, that is fantastic. So, Brian, you wouldn't believe we've been having a really good chat, but I mean, that pretty much, I mean, after you told us about the book that you've written about, the ones that you have on the way, I mean, is there anything else in the near future that you see for Brian Samuel?
Well, actually, we're building a house. My wife and I, my wife Marion, we are building our house. We're just coming to the last bit of it now, and it's a wonderful experience. Having traveled all over the world, you never put down roots. So this is only the second house that I will have owned in my life. But it is on land that was given to me by my grandfather, and it overlooks the house that he built and the valley that he once owned. And the name of the house reflects where me and my wife Marion are right now, and my family. It's a Zimbabwean word, and it's Kumusha, Kumusha, and it means home. It means the place where you were born. So I'm just so happy right now to be back where I'm born, and building our house. My children keep on telling me, Dad, stop calling it your final resting place. but it is, because I done roaming. I was going to call it that as well, but I'm done moving from one country to the other. I'm not going anywhere but right here in Grenada.
Okay, well, so Grenadians, I mean, if there isn't any incentive as to how, how the residents, view the country, this is an example of it. If you're hearing this. But Brian, I mean, that pretty much we're coming to the end of the interview, and I can't think of anything else to ask. But all I know is that it was just really a pleasure to interview you, to have you on this program. And I'm really appreciating messages that you shared with us, not just in the interview. I look forward to going through your book, because I'm really encouraged and I'm really excited to hear about your travels and the experiences and the interactions that you've had. And to be honest, I'm kind of flattered, because I mean, you're the product of the Caribbean. I mean, sure, you've traveled around the world and stuff, but if you've said it for yourself, the best education that you've gotten, I mean, from all the places that you've traveled, is from here. So
yeah, right here.
So yeah, so I look forward to your writings.
All right, great. Thank you very much. It was great being interviewed, Kevin, and it was good fun.
It was. You've been listening to TLC, Tropical Literature Creators. If you've heard something of interest or something you like, reach out to us. Reach out to our authors. Follow us on social media. We look forward to hearing from you.